All right, so my name is Evan Barger, EvanBarger, and that's the way you pronounce it. That's the way you sound it. And my show that I want to present to an audience of certain subject matter is called The Gate, and it's kind of a fun name, and then it's kind of not kind of a serious topic that we're going to be discussing. And the reason behind The Gate was simply it came from a couple different reasons, and I'm just gonna do just kind of a quick overview of where that came from. Number one was the 12 steps. I felt like I felt a lot of things within certain recovery communities that needed to be guarded and that they needed to have a gate. And that kind of led to more exploration into politics, religion, God. And then also when I was starting to develop that, that gate idea, I started to get kind of more creative, started understanding how arts, communication, various types of mediums, as far as paintings, movies, and all these sorts of things come about. And I wanted to kind of present this kind of conversation, this podcast, this show as far as, it's the gate. We're going to guard something. We don't want to have certain people come in or certain things come into play that kind of disrupts, the 12 steps. You've yanked out, certain ideas. And I am kind of taking a hard stance. And I feel that, this idea of protection for the gate kind of leads into understanding more about, cognitively, the kind of rise in somebody, right? Like you learn, something when you're in, recovery communities, when you're in AA, when you're in religious communities, I come in with a set amount of knowledge or no knowledge at all. And then eventually I learn more. Like you went up from 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way to 12. And at that 12 point, at a certain magnitude or a vector, you know, I hit a magnitude and a direction of my knowledge. And I feel protected, right? I have something in my mind, I have something in my body to help me, defend myself, better my life. And it's just kind of a quick idea that, we wanted to put a gate on the 12 steps inside Alcoholics Anonymous. And I started to explore that idea that, this idea of the steps, lead outward into something and then they lead upward to something. And a lot of people can kind of dissect the fact that, if you lead upward to something, you're going into the kingdom of heaven. Whether that is a afterlife perspective, something that I believe in, that my soul can, go somewhere else, or it's a creative or cognitive perspective. I have learned something in a manner that gives me more positive experiences in life. Just kind of, I'm being more creative, but I'm doing it in a positive manner. I'm not creating destruction, I'm creating, life. And then to go into the outside perspective, what is outside the 12 steps? What is, here's step 1, now I'm at 0, -1, -2. What does that look like? What does that feel like? And a lot of people would say, that's kind of hell. HELL, that's hell. I'm struggling really, really badly, and I've lost just every general concept, and maybe it's not that dark, and then maybe it is. So that's that perspective of, the gate, that is, kingdom, or this idea of, positive, and success in life should be guarded. We shouldn't have something that could be corrosive or, toxic to that. We're getting irrational thoughts, something isn't making sense. I get all the way to 12 steps and I see the cross. I was betrayed. So, there's that. And I know this is kind of like a heavy topic, AA, and then trying to take those 12 steps and elevating them, past just, labeling somebody as an alcoholic or somebody who has like substance abuse. And that, it's more profound than that. It is a knowledge base. Like, we have been led outside of the 12 steps. We have been led upwards in the 12 steps, and that gives us a perspective of where we should be doing in life. So, I think that it's just not just alcoholics. It's just not, people who have substance abuse problems. It's a much larger idea, this idea of cognitive development, intelligence. Once you gain more knowledge, life becomes funner. God becomes funner. The experience with God should not be kind of morbid. You say a loving God, you say a merciful God, you say somebody who gives knowledge. I mean, that seems, if you were to put that into a human being, this seems like you're a fun guy. Like, you bring a lot of laughter, a lot of joy into something, and, there should be that experience of having that fun with that, right? I should not, get to this 12-step point and I am, just feeling like, I'm just every day constantly trying to defeat, struggling, right? It should just be just like, organic. Like, I just took a run, I just went to the gym, something. I feel clean, but it's fun. I, ran the marathon. Wow, it's challenging. It hurts, but this is a blast, right? And I feel like there's a lot of misconceptions out there about, what God feels like, what you should be feeling in terms of holiness or divinity. And it's just like, a lot of people would probably say that, oh, your head is down, but you're constantly thinking about good things. That's not true. That's not true at all. I have an enormous amount of fun. It's almost a liberating or a leftist mentality, like going to like a concert. Like, is it difficult to write songs? Yes. Does the audience feel that, it's there's no struggle, there's just such an ease and peace to something? So, it should feel like that. It should, God should feel like that to, for a large portion of time. And then to follow up with that, that was the kind of the religious kind of awakening. And then to go into politics, right? Why mix religion and politics? Because these teachings in religion, um, I should have the same experience, if I'm a Republican, if I'm a conservative. I should have fun with this. I mean, why should this be something that, I just feel like it's like sitting at the DMV or going to, the IRS and like debating, where I'm at with my taxes. It shouldn't feel like bureaucracy. This should be fun. This is something that you like. There should be like just an absolute joy. And the same thing with like, being a Democrat or somebody who's on the left side, left and right. It should be fun. It should be a joy to be this person. It should be a joy to understand and read something. And so that's kind of want to bridge that gap into, religion and politics. Both of these things should be kind of simultaneously fun. Obviously government, how should we be running that? How should we be feeling, does our religious education actually, correlate into, politics? We can use Trump, we can use Putin, we can use Iran, we can use, Barack Obama, Joe Biden. How is it that, I'm actually, I went to church, I heard this teaching, I read the Bible, or, I'm a Muslim or Jewish or Buddhist, and I'm seeing somebody actually act in a moral stance, and I'm seeing the success out of that, right? Like, I'm not seeing somebody who, is really kind of walking around with their head low. And, it's the same thing with a lot of, a lot of people find Trump fun. He seems like an interesting guy. He really kind of is uplifting some people, but then it's causing a lot of controversy and, a lot of morality. Is this ethically right? The way you should be speaking on things in this manner. So, I just kind of wanted to say, here's religion, here's what I've been taught, here's government, and here's politics. I should be seeing some sort of, equaling, outcome that, I was taught this, and now it's kind of bleeding into, um, you know, governmental ideas that I should be seeing success. And are we seeing that, or are we not? It's like, here's the number one, and then politics is another number one. Am I seeing two? Why are we putting zero next to it? Somebody's trying to introduce some weird mathematics into something, and it should be kind of like an absolute. And then to kind of end this kind of small little intro is the arts and media and communication. It's like, here's the audience. You need to have some sort of meditative thought in religion. You need to understand what's in your environment, like government, like politics. You need to be kind of somewhat educated. But then here's recess. Here's where we get to kind of discuss, um, arts, media, movies, TV shows, you know, because, directors, writers, they have to always go off with, what's in their environment. NYPD Blue, Law and Order, all those things are just governmentally related. Some of the, like, Navy SEAL shows, like SEAL Team, Black Hawk Down, I know a lot of people are kind of interested in. All those things they're just government. Same thing with maybe some of the sci-fi stuff. I was watching Lord of the Rings. Where do you see, kind of this hocus pocus wizarding stuff? A lot of nerds out there. Where do these ideas come from? What is this idea of supernatural, where somebody holds a wand up and can have some sort of ability? Where do we get that? Is that God? Is that where you found that? I mean, where? It's almost profound to think that somebody has this imagination. To somebody has some sort of supernatural abilities. Where does your mind directly go into that fashion? And a lot of people might say religion. Jesus Christ, could heal the blind, could feed 4,000. Muhammad, Moses, some of these people, Hindu gods, like some of those things, like Buddhists, have these abilities, and we have kind of gained that insight about supernatural, and that has kind of led to the science fiction genre. That has led to the kind of wizarding world of Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, certain things in other genres like adventure genres, and there was just a kind of that direct line to that, and we can discuss that. And I know there's been certain things said about certain things like you shouldn't watch certain things that they kind of take away from that, and that's not true, because where did you come up with this idea that somebody has some supernatural power? And you're telling people not to look at this power, not to entertain this power. Are you hiding this power? Is that your secret? So we kind of like want to end the show some days with something fun. We're going to start off with religious. We're going to start off with something political, and then I kind of want to end something that's kind of very fun. We're going to discuss some maybe a new series that's on Netflix. A new piece of art, maybe an artist you don't know or an artist you do know, and we're going to just kind of discuss that. And I think that's just going to be, fun for me, and I think it should be kind of fun for the audience. So we're going to start.